Hi, everybody. This is Dan Cerrucci with something to say. And my thanks to Anna Maker for that cute little animated intro. Um, Everybody's got something to say, but we think that the things that we have to say here are really, really important. And I think they're especially important tonight because I have Washington Township, New Jersey Councilman Peter Del Borrello. He's actually Peter Del Borrello III.
I am. I am.
We just call him Pete Del Borrello, right?
Yes.
And in
Yes.
Washington Township, he's just Pete. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes. Or the blue suit guy. I get blue suit guy a lot too.
Oh, well, he's actually branded. This
Yes.
guy has branded himself, okay? He wears this blue suit. This vivid blue suit is very vivid. I'm not sure it really shows up here
Yeah.
tonight. And the red tie.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Washington Township is in Gloucester County, South Jersey.
Yeah.
Um, Very important. I explain this all the time
Sure.
to those who may not be in New Jersey.
Yeah.
There's North Jersey and there's South Jersey,
Yes.
like two entirely different places,
Two different worlds.
two different worlds. And Pete is, I think, is about as thoroughly South Jersey as you can be. What would you say, Pete?
I would agree with that. Definitely. I would definitely agree with that.
And you actually, now I'm here in Cherry Hill, and Cherry Hill now is a township of about 80,000 people.
Yeah.
It has grown, I would say, over the past 40 years, like doubled and tripled and whatever its size. Just dramatic, dramatic growth. And it's Cherry Hill's about 24 square miles.
Yeah.
Washington Township, Pete, I think is about 22 square miles.
Correct.
They're about the same size,
Yes.
but Washington Township doesn't have nearly as many people. It's not nearly as
No.
crowded. It's about 40 some thousand, right?
So we're just about 52,000 people, and it's
Oh,
funny you say that. Yeah.
52.
You're about 52,000 people.
Okay. I got
Yeah.
that wrong. 52. But you're still like 30,000.
Oh, we're way
Yeah.
short of Cherry Hill. No doubt about it.
So,
No
so
doubt.
the thing is, Pete, that you have a lot more open land there in Washington Township.
For now. We do now, but there's been a lot of changes coming up, and we could talk about all that. But I
Yeah.
got to throw some compliments to Cherry Hill. We do go head to head with you. I was just in your town a couple times. I was there when I was visiting Wonder because we're getting some of those. So some of the great businesses that come to New Jersey usually start in Cherry Hill. That's usually a good starting place for people. I went to a beautiful Diwali event that I go to every year in Cherry Hill. It's about 5 or 6 thousand people that attend that event. I mean, it's one of the biggest events I've ever been to personally. So it really is something that's really spectacular. So and I get to spend time with your council and your mayor, and I do like what's happening. Some of the things happening in Cherry
Oh,
Hill,
so you do know our mayor, Dave Fleischer.
I have met him. I actually met him at a Diwali event, and it's funny because I believe our old solicitor now is the solicitor of your town. And he reached out to me and he said, "You guys are so similar. The way that you care about the town, the way that you both operate." And we only spoke for a brief second. I think he was kind of taken back why I was there, and I was just invited by the event organizer to come. So it was odd that a Washington Township councilman was in Camden County, right over Gloucester County, but I was there actually representing Gloucester County as a county, and I was there, and then Congressman Norcross was there, and this event brings out politicians from all over. They do a great job of bringing people together.
Wonderful. I think that's wonderful. And no, I do see a lot of similarities between you and Dave. You're very on the ground. I call you on the ground public servants. So you are out there. I know this as a fact because you have a very strong social media presence, Pete,
Yeah.
and you are out there every day in Washington Township on the ground. You're. This is the interesting thing about this, folks. Though the councilman has a very strong social media presence, he also he incorporates that into and he reflects through the social media his very powerful face to face real, live, person to person presence, right? I mean, you're
Yeah.
out there all the time. I watch these videos that you do, and you're all over Washington Township.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank you. First of all, for having me on. I didn't say that in the beginning. I wanted to thank you for having me on. And it's funny. Before I started here, I have a pretty good, pretty crazy background. I'm actually a third generation pawnbroker. I grew up in that business, and then I became a venture capitalist. And the one thing that the reason I got involved in politics was I wanted to get a traffic light for a deadly intersection. I lived on a road, there was a deadly intersection. And you would think kind of like you just get up one day, you go to the mayor's office and you say, hey, listen, this is a deadly intersection. I'm sure you know it's a deadly intersection. We need a traffic light. And I started getting this whole crazy runaround. Right? I started getting this, well, you don't come here, you go to the commissioners. And I felt like a ping pong ball. And it was going back and forth and back and forth. And then finally I came home one day and I said to my wife, I'm like, it can't be like this. There's no way that anything can get done if this is the way things work. I said, you know what I'm going to do? And she's like, something tells me you're going to run for office. I'm going to run for office. I said, and not only going to run for office, I'm going to listen to what people say, and I'm going to spend every single day working on their problems, from the smallest to the biggest problem. I had no social media presence. I didn't really use social media at all. It wasn't something that was really important to me per se. So it wasn't something, I mean, our companies had it, but I didn't really use it. So I didn't really know much about it. And then when I was actually running for the office, I started making videos and I started putting them out there, and then I started meeting people, and I knew branding was really important. Now, for everyone who's listening, I've dressed like this since I was 7. I've always worn a suit. I don't know why. My mom would say, go upstairs and change. We're going outside and play. And I would be wearing a suit. So I've always been a suit guy that didn't, I changed the color of the tie. I used to really, wear a gold one when I was a venture capitalist. That was my color that I liked, but I always wore the blue and I liked the gold tie. I thought it looked nice. But when I ran, I thought branding was important. I thought it was important so people could come to you and tell you a problem, right? They wouldn't have to try to find your number or your email, or they could just spot you anywhere. And, then I started to say to myself, now what would I want my politician to do? How would I want my politician to interact? And then the next thing I did was I started standing on street corners, were busy and waving to people. And people just, it was like they saw like an alien, like they didn't know. And then by day 3, people started to wave back. And it was this interaction where, and then, one time an ambulance stopped by and said, hey, listen, they think you're in trouble. I'm like, no, I'm running for office. I'm not in trouble. I'm here. And we started having this interaction. And then we had set up an email, and people started emailing and said, listen, I don't know who you are. I've been looking you up, but any person who's willing to stand outside in the heat and the rain and the cold and earn my vote, that person shows me that they really want to work for me. And that really kind of started setting things in motion. And I said to myself, now what else would people want to see? What would I want to see as a person? And that was that kind of interaction. And I've really seen over this last 4 years, we have built a social media family. We started something called the Give and Train, which is basically, if you need something, tell us what you need. We'll put it out there. And we built such a community. Dan, I mean, we even with you, I mean, I consider us such a huge family of people that anytime I put something out, no matter what it is, and it's always positive, because I don't like negativity. I tell my children, you wake up every day, part of the problem, or are you part of the solution? Those are the 2 things you ask yourself. That guides your life every day, right? So I wanted to be positive. And if you notice, I don't talk about politics. Whatever you feel in your heart, that's how I'm happy
Right.
for you. I don't want to tell you who to vote for. I do very little endorsements, because again, at the end of the day, I want you to make that decision. Look around,
Right.
find out, and then make that decision on your own.
There's so much here in what you said. In full disclosure, everybody, I got to know Pete because I was at a political event, and his father knew that I had this social media presence, and dancerucci.com, my website, which, by the way, has just recorded 26 million
Wow.
page views. Okay,
Wow.
since it started, since it began.
That's still a big number. Doesn't
Right,
matter. It's
20
still a big number.
26 million page views. So his dad called me aside and he said, "You got to meet my son. You got to meet him. You would love him." And he's one of your biggest promoters. And so when I did meet Pete, I'm very how should I say this, intuitive about people. Okay,
Yeah.
I get a feeling from them right away. I just have first impressions are very important to me, but I'm very instinctive about
You know,
it. And so when I met Pete, I was like, oh my God, this guy's a dynamo.
I
But
appreciate that, and shout out to my
you,
dad, who really is my biggest fan, and still is. And that was really the upbringing that I had. And we were talking before we went on air about I grew up on a farm, and my dad always teased us that he had kids because he needed workers, but he taught us such hard work. I mean, we learned so much from him, and still do. Right? He's still my biggest fan. I'm still his biggest fan. I consider him my hero. I love everything that he taught us. He taught us so much about, I think, just treating others how you want to be treated. He taught us a lot about business. But the thing that he always let us do was make our own mistakes and then solve our own problems and be there if we needed them. So I
well,
shout my mom
yeah,
too. My mom's also, I adore her too. They're a great team. They work together. And I hope my wife and I always tell people, if I could be half the father my dad was to me, to my kids, they'll be just fine.
isn't that's a wonderful story and a wonderful sentiment. Now, your dad, uh, you come from an Italian American family. Your
I
dad
do.
came
Yeah.
from South Philadelphia. And
Yes.
this is an interesting story, folks, that of course South Philadelphia is absolutely legendary.
Yes.
We could spend the whole program with South
We
Philadelphia,
could.
which is
Absolutely.
like the little Italy of
Yeah.
Philadelphia. But a lot of people from South Philadelphia wound up, uh, what is it like? It's about 20, 30 miles
Yeah. It's not that far.
south,
Yeah.
south
Yeah.
of it's south, immediately south of South Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And why did they wind up there, Pete?
So they say this is the legend. The legend is that's where they ran out of gas. So this is how Washington Township was really formed, and it really is made up of so many great South Philly names and businesses, and everybody knows everybody. Mayor Delapia is from South Philly. Everybody's from there, right? And you usually say what parish you're from, right? So and you seem to know everybody. And the problem with South Philly is that everybody has a nickname. So when you ask about somebody, it's like Mike the Painter, right? Or like, so we always, that's another Italian thing. We don't, so when people ask me a last name, like, I know it was Mike the Painter. I don't know. I don't have no idea what his last name is, right? Like, you just be like Dan the radio, just Dan the podcast. So you don't never seem to learn anybody's last name. You just know that what their first name. And hopefully people know that. Oh yeah, Dan the podcast. Yeah, I know him. He's good. I'm Mike the Painter. Oh, I know. Yeah, he's good. He's a good painter, right? So that's the funny thing about South Philadelphia, and those traditions and those people have come here and brought that hard work, and it's really been a great melting pot, Washington Township.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of different ethnic groups there and different
Yes,
people from different places, and I'm sure it's becoming even more diversified as the years go on. I have several friends who lived there, and in fact, my mentor, Dr. Don Bagan from Rowan University, was
yeah,
my mentor, since deceased. But I absolutely revered him, and taught me so much of what I know today about public relations. I got my graduate degree right up the road there at Rowan.
great
And
school.
and Pete, you grew up in Gloucester Township,
I did, yeah, yeah.
and then you grew up on a farm, and now you have a little farm of your own in
I
Washington.
do. I do. It's a funny story. So, we're living on Salina Road, and my wife's like, "Listen, I want to move. I want to get off of Salina Road." I said, "Okay." So we actually moved. We saw a house, and she's like, "I don't like it. I don't want to move there." I said, "Oh, okay. It needs a lot of work." Blah blah. A year later, she's online. It was just at the beginning of COVID, and she's like, "I found this great house." So then she shows me the house. I'm like, "I showed you that house a year ago. It's the same house." So we went and saw it, and somehow she loved it. And listen, I could see my old house from my new house. So and not only did I not move far, I could see so I could still wave to my old house. That's how close we are. But yeah, so we bought a farm over here, and it's a great way. Listen, it was a great way to grow up. I always wanted my kids to grow up that way. I really think it teaches them a lot. It gives you a little bit of space to kind of, I have neighbors not far. I have great neighbors not too far away, but I can stretch out, right? I have that. It's a great piece of land, and it really is a piece of heaven for us. We're very happy here.
So, what was your wife's reaction when you told her you wanted to run for office? You wanted to get into politics?
So, I think everybody has the same thing. You have to sit your family down and you have to have a serious conversation. I'm lucky enough. I have four sons. That's Jackson, Peter, Nico, and Blaze. Jackson is my oldest boy, just turned 18. He's my stepson. I've been with him and Megan since he was 2. So
Yeah.
he literally, so you have to sit down with them and have that conversation because listen, we know politics, and at this level is some of the nastiest stuff. You could see it from a national level, but most of these people are never going to meet, Trump or Kamala. They're never going to meet them. So you can say whatever you want at this level, and they're never really going to see it at that level. At this level, these are your neighbors, right? These are the
Right.
people you go to Wawa with. These are the people
Right.
at your shop, right? So, I said to Meg, I said, so understand this is all part of it. But if we can get through this part, I think we can make a real difference. And she was on board because it's a lot of long days, a lot of long nights. And I think what you have to realize is once you start peeling back those layers of the onion, that there are truly people that have issues. There's people that, and they're not looking for a handout. They're looking for a hand up. They're looking for answers. Right. And I think for so often, and this is on both parties, you only see the politician when they're campaigning. Then they disappear. Where did they go? Right? They make Copperfield look like it, like, he can't do a trick that good. They completely vanish. And then they come back out 6, 7 months before the next election. And that's the
Yeah.
biggest problem. And
Yeah.
that's why I said I would never do that. I would make a video every day. I would take every single day and I flip my schedule around. So my work happens now at night and then I can spend my days on constituent issues.
You're tremendously accessible. I have to ask you, you're very intense. You're obviously very committed to this role. You, of course, you also are have your own profession as a
Yeah.
venture capitalist. But what do you do to decompress?
So I've always really been high energy. So this has always been very
I
natural for
didn't
me.
notice that. I didn't notice that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've always been this person. I think what keeps me going is knowing that we're getting things done. When I left venture capital, the first thing that happened was your income drops drastically. There's not a lot of money in honest politics. So so anyone who wants to know, there's not a lot of money made. But I think I've never been happier. I think at the end of the day, listen, I have to write checks now and make sure they clear, right? But and not that before I was ultra wealthy, but obviously my income level was much different. But I also think that I wasn't nearly as happy. I wasn't as happy as I am right now. I would trade all of that away, and I did, because the life of service is there's nothing better than this. To meet the people I meet every single day, to actually be able to say to people, I think we can fix this. And if I can't, I know where to send you. So I think all those things that I learned throughout my life, I take all of those things and then we just try to use it for positive. We just don't want to, at the end of the day, too often your politicians, like I said, they disappear. But it's like, hey, listen, if you have a problem, our office is open 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. What about Saturday and Sunday? What about 5:30? What about? So I said to people, I'll take your call 24/7. Doesn't mean I'll have an answer 24/7. It means I'll answer 24/7, and then we'll work on the problem. And so, and it really started to take hold. I get calls from people from all. This is a funny story. A woman said to me, "I can't get my air conditioning out of my window." I said, "Oh, that's an easy thing. I mean, listen. I'm not the Hawk, but I could get your air conditioning out." She sends me her address. She's in Elkton, Maryland. So I just prayed the whole time I'm driving. My wife doesn't call me and say, "Where are you?" And I'm saying, "Well, I got to drive to Elkton, Maryland, and take this lady's air conditioning out of her window." But you know what? Again, it's a nice hour drive. Got there, made a great friend out of it. Right? She's like, "If I ever move, I'll vote for you." But that's the other thing too. It's funny too, Dan, when people start off and say, "I didn't vote for you." I'm like, okay, that doesn't matter. That doesn't change what my job is. Hopefully, if I help you, it changes your mind for the future. And if it doesn't, it's still my job. So I never do things
Yeah.
for votes. I do things for laughs because I don't ever think you take yourself too seriously. I was in a dunk tank last night. I still have bloodshot eyes from it, but I was at a foam party. Last week I was in a dumpster. But these are things that I think people have to realize are like, don't take yourself too seriously. Laugh a lot. Life is, I say to people all the time, that the most valuable commodity, Dan, is time, right? That is the world's most valuable commodity for two reasons. One, you can't make more of it. And two, you never know how much you really have. So I want to take my most valuable commodity and give it to others. And I say to them, now, my only ask is this: you accept my most valuable commodity, and I won't waste yours. I won't waste yours with political talk. I won't waste yours with all kinds of crazy stuff. I'll just use it to make sure you get what you need. And I live by that motto.
It's an incredible philosophy, and obviously you have the energy to do it. You said you were always like this. You always had a lot of energy, and then you said you were, even as a youngster, you wore a suit. Were you sort of nerdy?
I don't think I was always kind of that guy that like you knew a guy, like because my family was from Philadelphia. I always just had these ideas in my head about business. I remember my father when I was 7 was like, "You want to learn stock?" And I'm like, "I want to trade stock." So I really always had a business sense. I always wanted to build a big company. That was really something that was important to me. And as time went on, and my dad had built a big company too. But I'd also realized that, I mean, my dad worked from sun up to sundown. I mean, he was a 7 day a week guy. My mom always let us know he was working for us. He wasn't a suit guy by any stretch. He was more of a blue collar guy, but he was a hard worker, right? And he didn't really have any education, but he had his two hands, and he had a heart. And that really can take you much further sometimes than anything, right? The idea that you're willing to outwork everybody, or you're willing to put in the hard work. And, he built a franchising company, and a lot of early deals that he did was on a handshake. So he would shake your hand, and if he told you to put that business in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa, you would do it, because he didn't worry about himself making money. He worried about you being able to support your family. And if you could support your family and you could make money, then his company would make money. And he always kind of instilled that in us. So when I went out to really be a venture capitalist, and I really wanted to create, something, and I can tell you, I can't tell you how many pitches I sat through, but the ones that stuck with me were the ones where the entrepreneur said to me, "I'm going to grind it out. I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to put in long days and long nights." The ones where people said to me, "I'm just going to hire people," Dan, I knew their heart wasn't in it. And you see that in Shark Tank sometimes. You see that now, right? But I used to see that firsthand, and I would see those people, and I would say, forget about what the product of the service was. It was that person was willing to work really hard. And those were the ones that I'm telling you, I would say almost 100 times, or 99% of the time, or 100% of the time, they really did well because they understood, right? They really
That's why,
wanted it.
that's why they say 90% of good luck is hard work.
It's hard work. It's so true, right? And I get to do that now every single day. I take all those skills. Now it's different. It's not my money on the line, but I can go to those entrepreneurs and say, "Listen, I've been in your shoes." In fact, we do something here called working in your shoes. I've worked in all kinds of crazy jobs, and there's more jobs that over the next coming months that I'll be working, including with the exterminator. Apparently, he's going to have me in a crawl space. I can't even imagine what that's going to be like. But again, I understand now what he goes through, and I understand what people have to do to make a living. And then I understand now about when you have to raise taxes, or you have to tell people the costs are going up. I can understand how they make a living now. I can understand how they service their customers. And that just makes me better to understand when I'm doing these votes, or I'm doing these things to keep those people in mind.
Well, you spend a lot of time promoting businesses in Washington Township too.
Yeah.
I see that's a big part of. Is that connected to your actual profession, your
No,
business?
no. I just, I think small business always needs, listen, it's the backbone of our country. I can appreciate it. I love great stories. I actually had a radio show for a short amount of time, and I just couldn't keep up with it time wise, because they shot out of Vineland, and it was every Wednesday, and I just couldn't get my schedule to work around it. But it was called The Business Journey. And I love great business stories. I love how there's a new bakery in our town called Too Sweet Bakery, and they started off in their kitchen 7 years ago. They rented a spot in Deptford, which is a great town, and they just moved back to Washington Township. They did their grand opening the other day. They had 150 people in line waiting for them to open. I mean, that just shows the power of they're
Tremendous.
putting people to work. The father was there, the daughters were there, the mother was there. They put out such an amazing product that people come from all over. It's literally a destination point now, right? And I love those stories. I got another great one too, where I was working on a project in Florida, and there was a guy that came down. I met with him at a trade show, and he's like, "I want to come down to Florida and see the product working." I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So long story short, I ran in the bank because it was like an ATM machine, and it needed ones. So I ran there, got ones, I got fives, and the girl had like a candy dish there. It was my brother and I, and we took some candy out, and I put it in the candy dish, and he picks up this piece of candy. I don't know if you know this, but it's called Warheads. I don't know if you know that candy. Warheads. Have you ever
No.
heard of that? So it's a really popular brand with kids. It's a sour candy. Mostly all kids will know what it is. But so he picks it up and he says, "Who makes this candy?" So I says, "Oh, I have no idea. Maybe Mars or Willy Wonka. I don't know." He says, "No, it's not them." He said, "What if I told you it's the guy in the front seat of your car right now?" And here's this guy who's with me now. Now he sold that company. If you go to Home Depot, those lollipops at the end of the aisle, that was his company. He started that from his garage, him, his wife, and him. And what they did was they built that into a powerhouse. They had Circus Peanuts was their brand. They bought this brand, Warheads, and they sold this company for hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, he never came off like that. I never knew that. I liked him as a person, but I love those great stories. And there's so many, the
Amazing.
other reason I
Yeah.
highlight businesses here because, listen, Elon Musk, some of these great business people,
Right.
Jeff Bezos, but you go see Two Sweet Bakery. They're great entrepreneurs too, right? And you can reach out and talk to them. You can reach out and touch them. You can see the success they've had, right? And I love that they're so local and they're willing to give their time. There's another guy around the corner, Anthony Bott. He's another guy who's just doing side jobs. He built a really nice company, good to go, and here he is now. Him and his wife and his kids. I love those stories. I love them. I
It's an
can't get enough of them.
amazing American story. Now, let's talk a little bit about politics. Now, New
Yeah,
Jersey, of course, is a very, very blue state.
it is.
Some people thought a couple of years ago that we might be becoming a purple state or a swing state,
Yeah.
but it certainly doesn't seem that way now. Now in Washington Township, though, um, there is sort of a two-party system. You're a Republican. It's not an easy place to be in New Jersey to be a Republican. I mean, what's it like?
So the first question I always get from everybody is, what party are you with? And I would tell everybody all the time is, you're only a party on a ballot. And then once the election is over, you have to represent everybody or you're not going to do a great job.
Right.
And, people always say that's a political line or something. I'm like, it's really not. I have to work with both sides and for a good reason. New Jersey is a blue state, and people that are not within my own sphere, I have to work with them because there's things my office just can't do, and I'm wise enough to know that, right? So if I need to go to the congress's office and I have a good relationship with the staff that works there, I need things that I need, and I'm willing to say, forget about political lines. Let's just get people what they need. The congressman's office put on this event about 2 weeks ago, and there was a lot of people there, and people were like, "I'm surprised to see you here." Well, don't be surprised to see me here. I'm not here about political parties. I'm here because this is a good event and you have great information that I can pass on to my constituents. So I don't worry about, those things. So do I like the way New Jersey's going? No, I'm upset about a lot of things. And I usually don't talk too much politics. I think when people come up to me, they think I'm going to talk a lot about it, and I don't. Listen, we're the highest property tax state in the country. We're
Unbelievable.
losing
Terrible.
people. Right. It's terrible. I mean, people can't afford to live here. And these are the people that built this community, this county, this state. Now they have to move. And that doesn't always mean, like I said, it's not always like your grandkids could just go with you. Sometimes you have to leave your family because you just can't afford to stay somewhere. And that hurts me. Leave because you want to, not because you have to. And I worry about some of the things and some of the directions that we're going. And I don't get involved in too much of some of the other stuff. I really try to keep things in the middle. And if you notice my social media, I really don't talk too much about it because
No.
I really don't want to divide people, Dan.
And
I
you're
really
you're
feel
non
like,
you're non-ideological. You're non-ideological. You're not what I would call dogmatic.
yeah,
You don't come off as extremely partisan, but I think you recognize in local politics. Well, my father was like, well, when I was growing up, we were Democrats, and my father was a Democrat foot soldier,
sure.
in the Democrat machine in Camden, in the city of Camden.
Yeah, wow, that's yeah.
It was rough. It was rough and tough. And he said, look, this is what it's about. And he was talking local politics, quote
Yeah,
unquote politics. Collect the trash, keep the streets clean,
yeah,
control the taxes, okay? And make sure people are safe in their homes. And
yeah,
that's local politics, okay? You
yes.
have a snowstorm in the winter, clear the streets.
Clear the street. Well, he's a smart man. That's it. You know, he's so true. And like even in Camden now, I have two friends that are Camden council people. You know, Councilwoman Ramos and Councilman Collins, and I adore both of those people. And obviously, we're not in part of the same party, but it doesn't matter. We're part of the people party, right? And I think people put so much emphasis on D&R, but you know, I like to think more of V for volunteerism. I think that's really what people are looking for. I really spend very little time about politics. And, you know, it's part of everyday's life. There's a great meme. It's an old guy sitting in a chair and he's like, life is short. I want to spend as much time as possible fighting with people, strangers online about politics. And I that sticks with me because I really don't want to fight about it. And I think that the reason why that I've kind of clicked with both sides is that they're like, this guy really means what he says. He really doesn't talk politics. I don't, like I said, I make very few endorsements. I have what I feel my heart is the right way to go. I don't want to tell people what that is. I want people to figure that out for themselves. When I get in the voting booth, I really do look at candidates. I've seen candidates on both sides that were excellent. But at the end of the day, I see a candidate that represents me more. You know, I want to see more candidates that come out and on both sides and do more. You know, I'm lucky enough to work with, like I said, Mayor Delapia and Councilman Joe Harris and Don Brown and Jack Yerkes and even Councilwoman Dana Pascalone. These are great people. We took a picture last night and Mayor called me this morning. He's like, I love my job. I love you guys. We were racing through a kid. They had an event yesterday. We were racing and had a relay and we love each other as people. And that's why we work so well together. And that's really what needs to come out. And so often politics in our town, especially, and I'm sure Cherry Hill was like this at one point too. I mean, it was a bloodbath. I mean,
Yeah,
local politics was screaming and hollering. And I'm
yeah.
like, circuses. I
Well,
won't be part of that, Dan. I just won't do it.
Cherry Hill was like that, but that was decades ago. And for 30, 40 years, it's been a one party town. There's really been no
Yes,
competition.
that's
No
true. And again, that's
competition
not always the
whatsoever.
worst thing, right? And like even like your dad was saying. So, you know, what I've noticed too is that, and I'm the grandson of a proud union man. My grandpa was a very proud Democrat. He was a union
Uh,
man. He was a shop steward for the Printers Union, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of our unions. I'm proud of So there's a lot of things that I can agree with. I got to say, Dan, you got to realize that most Americans, 70% of us, can agree on the hard topics. But on both sides, you know what you've had extremism. And that extremism is being the loudest, right? Because, you know, you have people say, I don't recognize the Republican Party or I don't recognize the Democratic Party. Well, you do, but that extremism is being the loudest, right? Because we could sit down, I'm sure 70% of us can agree on the hard things that divide us. I know that every day because I know people that really believe that we are coming together. I did a post the other day and it was about, like I said, that woman that needed help. Nobody said, can I ask how she voted in the last election? Because I don't really want to help her if she didn't vote for the person I voted for. They didn't ask. They never asked. The Giving Train never says, who did that person vote for? Or, you know, it's just, how can I help? And that's what we need more of.
Earlier, you we talked a little bit about that there is quite a bit more open space in Washington Township than there is in Cherry Hill, but you alluded to the pressure that you're feeling in Washington Township. I know one of the factors is the mandate that you have to build uh, moderate income housing,
Yeah.
okay, which is the law in the state of New Jersey.
Yes.
But there's a lot of other pressure. How are you dealing with that? Because you want to retain. There's some beautiful, beautiful areas in Washington Township. You want to retain that sort of semi-rural feeling to the community. There's still farmland there and so forth, and yet you're. How do you balance this out, and what kind of pressures are you experiencing?
Yeah, listen, so that's one of the things that I don't like, and that's what most people don't realize. So Washington Township has a really high affordable number. And in order to hit that number, we need to build 6,000 new houses. The problem is we're the garden state, right? So we have all these housing projects, and we've sat down with these developers, and they said to us, and I said to one developer, I said, you know, why is this happening? Because I got to be honest, every person that comes in, I want to talk about commercial. I want to talk about some of the existing buildings we have, you know, repurposing them. They're like, listen, you have a high affordable number. You have a really nice medium income family, you know, number, and you have to build these. So you guys are really a sitting duck, and that's really what it's been like. Now, there's been a bunch of mayors and a bunch of towns that challenged this recently. They lost. It is the law in New Jersey, and I tell people all the time, systematic building makes sense. Forced building doesn't. You're forcing us to do things. Now, what's going to happen is, and over time, this is exactly what happens. You need more police. You need more fire. You need more EMTs. Your schools are going to be stretched to the max when the school system's already having problems, right? So this doesn't help the situation. We could sit down and come up with a formula that makes sense. And again, not being political, but I do think Jack Cigarelli had a good plan. You really can't tie the school formula to property tax, right? It just doesn't work. And we've seen that it doesn't work. And that's one of the things too that I do believe is something that I do possess that I think is such a good thing. And so is our mayor and even Councilman Joe Harris is that, and even Jack are all business people. So we see the government as a business. And we say to ourselves, okay, this is our business. Here's our P&L. Here's what we need to do. How do we make the township, more profitable without sacrifices? But adding houses is not the answer.
And you're
Right.
just a small you're just a small part of the property tax bill.
Yeah.
I saw that somebody recently contacted you through social media complaining about their property tax. And of course,
Yeah.
one of the first things you pointed out to him was that you are a the local municipality is but a tiny portion of this total property tax bill. You're like this much.
Yeah, we're 18%. 18%. And I tell people all the time, and actually in our tax bill they send out $100 bill and they break it down to show you that, listen, out of $100, $18 stays with us. And the majority of that money is the schools. And, our superintendent told me, he told me a couple of years ago, he said, Pete, our situation is catastrophic. Do you know what that means? I'm like, I do know what that means. And the problem is that you're not getting changes and the formula is not changing. And the schools are continuously going like this. They don't have the money to operate. So they keep raising. They're going above the cap, right? The governor's allowed them to go above the cap. And they're the reason why your bill is going astronomical. And people are like, you don't know what it's like. Well, listen, I do know what it's like. I have to pay the same bill. I don't get any tax breaks or anything like that. I don't have a pilot program for my home, right? So I have to pay taxes just like everybody else. And I get it. Dan, I'd rather you take that money and take your kids away. Give your kids an experience. Listen, I'd rather you take it down to Atlantic City, put a red and black. You got a better shot with that, right? There's better odds in you doing that than paying it to your government to put it into a failing system. That's where it needs to change. And when people think, it's so important that people realize when you vote for your school boards, to make sure you pick people that understand that. Right. And I, even here, people are saying that, I'm meddling the school board. I'm not. Right. I have a vested interest because I'm a taxpayer, but I'm a dad first. Right. And I think all these children, I want them. We have great teachers. We have great administrators. This isn't against them. It's like a broken business. Right. And you have to fix it. That's why we have to look at it. This is not because people say, well, then you're anti-union or you're anti-teacher. I'm none of those things. I'm not any of those things. I adore our teachers. I've had the pleasure to visit every one of our schools multiple times. I read that most of our schools are younger schools and read across America. I love spending time with our children. They're the future of our community. But I want them to have the same opportunities. And I don't want them to move out because their parents can't afford to live here.
And I got to tell you, I recently did an informal survey. Of course, my kids are grown up. They went through college. They started working on their own, thank God, employed, gainfully employed. They're married. They have children of their own now. Neither one of them live in New Jersey. And I did a little informal survey of all of the kids that my kids grew up with in our neighborhood in Cherry Hill. I'm going to say there must have been about 20 or 30 of them that I was aware of.
Yeah.
They all went to college. They're all professionals. And about 80% of them have left New Jersey. 80% of them.
And that's just your neighborhood.
Brain drain. And what I fear here, Pete, is that the makers are leaving and the takers are arriving.
You have the problem is that the formula doesn't work. So we need everyone to understand that this isn't about Republicans or Democrats. This is about us figuring this out, because this is the next generation, right? Making sure they have the best education, making sure that their school system isn't taken over by the state, which is happening, which is the worst thing. I mean, now you see, I just read an article the other day, and I believe it was $600 million that the Philadelphia school district is borrowing to pay its bills. This is scary stuff. And this is really scary stuff. And to have these kind of numbers, these are the future of our world, right? I mean, inside of these classrooms are bright minds, right? They really, let's give them the best opportunity, and let's show them that we can work together. No political parties, just work together. Let's do that. So yeah, listen, I think it's so important. I tell everybody, the most important board in any town is the school board. No mayor, no council, nothing is more important than these children. Nothing. I feel that way with my own children, and I feel that way about everybody.
I don't think people pay enough attention to it.
They don't.
The
They
school
don't.
board candidates are way down on the ballot.
Yeah.
A lot of people never get that far down.
Yep.
They don't pay an awful lot of attention to it, and yet they complain about it.
You know what? Life gets in the way of life, Dan, and that's what it is. You know, I've met so many parents, and I think the issue is, before I was really involved, I was just like them. And that's why I say to them, I understand, because you know what it is? They're trying to take their kids to hockey. They're trying to take their kids to cheer. They're trying to take their kids on vacation. And life just gets in the way of life. I got to be honest, our council meetings, if we have 10 people, that's a lot, right? Now, if we're honoring somebody, which we try to do at a lot of meetings, but once all those honorings are done, the room empties. Thank God the camera doesn't pan the room. You know, I mean, we need to get some seat fillers, but and not because they don't care, because life gets in the way of life. I understand where they're coming from, and that's why they elected me. In their mind, they're like, you're going to be my voice, you're going to be my eyes, and when I need something, I want to reach out to you. And that's what I said. Hey, that's what I'm here for. That's really what this is all about. This is that you want me to be your voice, but I'm going to bring you what we're doing every single day. I'm going to show you what you voted for, and hopefully, you know, you say to yourself, okay, I feel good about this. I feel like we're going in the right direction. And if you don't, here's my phone. This is my government phone they give me.
I know this is where we started, and I said you're very, very accessible. And I think this is a good place to wrap it up, Pete. I want to say that this is live on my YouTube channel. I also, when we go off here, it will be right away. It will be on my Facebook page. I will pin it to the top of the page. I will make it public so that you will be able to take it and share it.
Thank you.
It's also going to be on LinkedIn, and it will be on my website, dancerrucci.com. So it's not a matter of who saw it live now. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to be able to see it on any one of these platforms in the days ahead, because it's going to be there permanently.
Yeah.
So everybody's going to have a chance to view it. I might even be able to take some clips from it and showcase them. And I know you're going to put it out there. And I'm so glad we had this opportunity to chat.
Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate you. Keep it, everything you're doing, keep it up. Thank you so much to you.
It's my pleasure. And I continue to wish you every success and much love, of course, to your family and your dad, who helped to bring us together.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you, Dan.
Take care. Good night.
God bless.
Bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.